keeping that focus for you this afternoon. As Jerome has said, I am Victoria Clare. I've recently received an honorary Doctor of Arts. That was a wonderful day for me back in July, where I received it for the outstanding contribution to public art. So the University of Bolton is very dear to me. I work as a lecturer at the moment over in fine arts, and that's what I've been doing all week, which has been really wonderful. And I'm actually just starting a PhD myself by professional practice, where I will be kind of looking at my profession and the impact that it's made on not just the art industry, but in the sight loss kind of realms as well.
Progressive sight loss.
So you might notice this is going to be a little bit different, and it's really just a model of how somebody that obviously is blind has to kind of do presentations as well. So as you could hear, there was a little audio cue for me, which is fantastic because that keeps me where I need to be. Okay, so it's a little unusual, but it's a model to show how it can be done as well. So I suffer from a disease that is called retinitis pigmentosa. I was diagnosed with the disease when I was 19 years old. I'm now 49. I'm now in the final stages of sight loss. Just to kind of put that into context for you, it's really for me movement and light perception. When the light perception isn't there, there is nothing. So examples of the things that RP bring are just behind me. Night blindness actually is the first thing that you suffer with RP, and it's a big sign actually that if you can't see at night, then there's a problem. There's several other problems as well, one of which is called Charles Bonnet syndrome. I don't know whether anybody has actually heard of that, but it's to do with the visual cortex, and where the optic nerve is unable to take the correct information from the retina, as the retina is slowly deteriorating over time. The visual cortex gets a bit bored and thinks, okay, right, so I can't really get any information and data from this, so I think I'm going to chuck out an old childhood scary memory. And that's probably the best way to put it, because it engages with part of the brain where we hold trauma, and if you've had a trauma in your childhood, it's likely that that trauma will be kind of highlighted through Charles Bonnet. So Charles Bonnet basically is hallucinations. So as you can imagine, it's not the nicest sort of situations to go through, and there's not much known about it. There is more coming about Charles Bonnet, and I'm actually kind of supporting Asmay's Umbrella. That is a Charles Bonnet Foundation with Judith Potts and Dr. Dominic Fitch. I do a little bit of work on the ambassadorship with those guys to kind of spread the word of Charles Bonnet. There's many other things that you see. Ocular pressure. Ocular pressure is very, very important in terms of if you have high ocular pressure and it isn't controlled, and it unfortunately, like myself, turns into glaucoma. So you have a multi-layered problematic. Once you have almost like one disease of the eye, of course, is so much more vulnerable and has so much more other complexities that you are likely to have other diseases of the eye as well. I had a cataract removed back in June. Those cataracts, I have one in the right. I'm still deciding if I want to have it done or not, basically because it doesn't really make any difference visually to me. It just holds the health and the structure of the eye much better without the cataract being there. They're not normal cataracts, unfortunately. They are posterior cataracts at the back of the eye, so not the easiest ones to remove. So yeah, that just kind of gives you a little overview of retinitis pigmentosa and the additional kind of problems that it gives you.
Portfolio 1.
So I move on to my career as a professional art practitioner. I've been creating works of art for 30 years on a commission basis mainly. I didn't start exhibiting, believe it or not, until 2014. I've basically been a commercial artist commissioning works all over the world. Many of my private clients are as far afield as Australia, America, Germany, Italy, and that's just to kind of name a few. My career has been one that I would say has had to kind of go through a lot of adaptation because of the sight loss. Is progressive. As I get to a progression, I have to change the way I work and how I can produce my work. Just to kind of fill you in, I actually didn't train as a graphic designer. I was a graphic designer trained. I didn't train as a sculptor. I didn't realise I even wanted to do sculpture until I was on a course that was for graphic design. I happened to kind of pick up a book in the library, fell in love with sculpture, and the rest is history. But it's almost I guess in my mind, I think that's fate, because if I had a stayed with graphic design, of course that's a very visual art medium, and that would have been taken away from me at some point. But by carrying on doing sculpture, I still sculpt to this day, and believe I always will. There's a few pieces. There's a piece called Time. That particularly is a flagship piece to the exhibition I had at the House of Commons back in 2015, and the whole exhibition was called Through the Eyes of Time. Art for me, sculpture for me, has always been one way of which I could articulate my inner feelings about my sight loss, and I think Time does that really well, because it depicts half of a face, and you have basically a piercing and then a pupil that is depicted by a clock. And the point of that is to say, I'm losing my sight. I don't know how much time I've got before I go blind. So quite a powerful piece. There's a piece there called Devotion.
Portfolio 2.
We have such pieces as Open Heart. I do like to suspend crystals or other forms that I've created within the work. I find that quite an interesting view for people to almost kind of feel like it's just in midair in the centre of a piece of work. I studied Barbara Hepworth, Henry Moore, very much love the fact that I get to nod my head and say good morning to a Barbara Hepworth sculpture every day when I come to university, so it doesn't get much better than that for a Barbara Hepworth fan.
Portfolio 3.
Again, we have two sculptures, again, Soul Searcher, depicting somebody that is searching for answers but just can't find them, you know. Quite a contemporary piece as well. Enlightenment is one step further, so Enlightenment is Soul Searcher, but a little bit later on, so Soul Searcher eventually found the light, and it's quite an interactional piece because the base has a little switch on it, and in the centre there we have a little sort of kidney bean shape, which I don't know why, but I always see that as the soul, but there's little piercings within that, and then you switch the light on the base and it lights up, hence the piece called Enlightenment.
Portfolio 4.
So again, Portfolio 4, we've got The Guardian. Again, that was in the Through the Eyes of Time. That's a very large floor standing wing. That was created for me because I have a very strong belief in such things as having guardians within other realms that help us out, one of which is my granddad, so that was almost like a nod to know that my granddad is with me wherever I go. And then we have a piece there that depicts a boat that's called Golden Breeze.
Portfolio 5.
These are two very early pieces of work, so you're probably going to notice it's very figurative. It's obviously two female figures. The first figure there is Spirit. Her spirit was actually a therapeutic thing for me. So taking you back just a little bit, after I got into my art college course, which was graphic design, I did for 2 years keep coming back and forth with sculptural solutions to a graphic design course, and somehow I was managing to get away with it, and I decided by the end of that course that actually I really wanted to be a sculptor. I didn't want to kind of continue graphic design. If anything, I wanted to go to art college, go on to university to study sculpture and then continue to be a lecturer of sculpture. So off I went to Staffordshire University. It was a very prestigious 28 places alone in Europe on the course. I was so honoured to get one of those places. And then, unfortunately, the bottom of my world fell out and I found out that I was going blind. I was 19 years old. I'm sure you can imagine it's the gateway to the rest of your life. And if you get dealt with such a traumatic experience, it you know, it just takes a very, very long time to even get your head around that and what that means for your life, what that means for your future. I did go to Stafford for a very short amount of time, but it became really, really apparent to me that I was out of my depth. I didn't have the support that is now available. Thankfully, there is so much more availability in terms of support with universities, but this was 1995, and it really wasn't there at that time. So unfortunately, I had to make an extremely hard decision and leave university. So I basically returned back to my parents' home and spent roughly about a year and a half to 2 years in a very dark place. But then there's only so long you can stay in a dark place, really. And I guess I figured that even though I didn't get the said degree, there was no reason why the practical of doing sculpture wasn't still within me. So I decided to start sculpting purely for therapeutic reasons, and that piece, Her Spirit, was the first piece that I did for that therapeutic reason. As it happened, somebody saw the piece of work and said, "Oh, I have a friend, she owns a little local gallery, would you like to put it in the gallery?" They were put in the gallery, they were sold in 2 weeks. So that gave me the inclination, oh, okay then, people actually like my work, and this is quite sellable. So that's really what put me into the realm of freelance sculpting. So from then onwards, I set myself up as a freelance artist.
Blind, a sixth sense.
So Blind as Sixth Sense I want to spend a bit of time with, because basically Blind as Sixth Sense was happening in 2018, but it's still hopefully kind of very current now. I started to use a long cane probably a long time after I should have done. It was one of these things, my own psychological journey of acceptance to blindness has been very, very long, and I've been jumping out of the stages of grief for many, many years, and never really accepted the fact that I was going blind, and certainly I didn't want the world to know. And of course, if you're walking with a long cane, that's a massive beacon for the rest of the world, and I kind of wanted to keep it very private. But there's only so long you can do that, and there's only so many bad accidents you can have before you actually come to realise, hold on, I actually need to be supported here, and I was actually needing to look after myself by doing the long cane. The long cane training happened for 3 months. It gave me an innate sense of freedom and trust. I learnt it at night because I still back then had residual vision. This was 2016, so I had a little bit of residual vision, which was enabling me actually to engage with the cane really well. So I had to do all of my training at night, which was very, very good for that fact, because it really meant that I had to use the cane and engage on a different level of my own self in a trust to use that cane. And that's what inspired this very exhibition. After I used that cane, I decided I needed to articulate once again, as I have done for most of my life, through my collection of sculpture and creating sculpture. I depicted the 5 senses and a 6th sense, and sculpted sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and a final 6th sense. The 6th sense, as you will notice, is actually a commission from a few years prior to this exhibition, the dove. But I was very, very lucky enough to borrow this particular piece back from the private client to use as a 6th sense. And to me, it depicts freedom and trust so beautifully, with the wings kind of spread out we all want to fly, and I feel quite sure that flying would be the most freedom that you'd ever have, you know, if we could. So anyway, these pieces of artwork were then put into a completely pitch black gallery. Now, this was 2018. It had never been done in the UK before. To my knowledge, it still hasn't been done in the UK due to copyright. And many artists, many visually impaired artists and curators are kind of researching around it, shall we say, and putting sensory exhibitions on in a different way, which is quite nice because it proves to me the impact not on just the social level and societal level within the art industry as well. You know, it created impact and inspired other curators and artists to want to kind of explore around that as well. So it did have a very profound kind of impact. It was on the BBC reported, it was on local TV, it was in many papers and magazine publications. It saw my career kind of really take off, to be fair. I mean, my career started to really get very recognised when I exhibited through the Ice of Time in the House Commons. But once I did this was something very unique, and I think it caught an attention of a lot. It was actually being balloted to go into the Turner Tate in Margate, but unfortunately by the time it was kind of awaiting the programme, along come COVID. So unfortunately that never happened. However, there are people, curators and various galleries that I'm in touch with and having conversations with. So it's looking like Blind to Sixth Sense as a concept will go forward and continue.
Other creative outlets.
So other creative outlets for me, basically, I love to write. I really enjoy content writing. I like poetry. I also love music. I play piano and guitar and sing and compose my own compositions. I've been involved with music just about as long as I've been involved with sculpture, in and out of various bands, etc. But again, music is a universal language, and it is such a beautiful place to articulate your feelings and your expressions if you're somebody that isn't very good at putting it into conversational words. It's another outlet of expression.
Kintsugi.
So really, from this part of the presentation, I kind of dash through the past to bring you to the now, and then hopefully bring you to the future. So at the moment, as I've said, have kind of so much engagement within the university, and so much opportunity has come out of that for me, for which I'm incredibly grateful. But I'm very interested in the illusion of perfection, and in fact earlier on in this year I was here speaking within the psychology department about that. But I think it's important to touch upon because it's very much a part of my own journey of acceptance. I've always been somebody that has always been a little bit wanting to be perfect, you know, don't want to do anything wrong, and always being a people pleaser, maybe detrimentally to myself and also to my work. So, you know, I needed to open up my mind, and all of a sudden, in my therapy at the time, I discovered Kintsugi and I started to read about it. Now, it's the art of repair, the ancient art of the Japanese repair. So usually done in ceramics, vases, bowls, etc. If it breaks, if the ceramic breaks, the philosophy is to put it back together. The practical way of putting it back together with gold resin. And the philosophy behind that is that they believe 100% that we really need to embrace all our imperfections and to show the value of all of our flaws, what that shapes us like. So if you can imagine, you can see all these beautiful gold threads running through the ceramic, and it's not hiding any imperfections, it's sharing those imperfections and showing pride within the piece, that actually it gives it more value. And of course today my whole presentation is the value of blindness.
Journey to self-acceptance.
So as I just kind of touched on a little bit there, the journey of acceptance with sight loss, just sight loss actually, but to accept oneself, who you are as a person. You are shaped, you are obviously in experiences in your past, they shape you. And for me, I got to a stage in my life where I just had to really super reflect and to say, who am I as a person? Because I was only really identifying myself as one thing, and that was a sculptor. But then I realised I'm so much more than just a sculptor. I'm a daughter. I was a wife at the time. I owe myself to my own autonomy, and that's something that I think my therapy has taught me. So the things that I mentioned on the journey of acceptance, most certainly for me, has been therapy. I've been in therapy for a long time. I probably always will be. I am not ashamed of that at all. I am the biggest advocate you'll ever meet about self-development and self-inquiry. I don't think that we ever really will, stop learning. We will learn until the day we die. And if we can engage in learning and engage in growth, then I believe that our lives will become more joyous and greater experiences. So therapy, there's other things there, such as engaging with nature. I'm also a surfer. I do love to surf, and it's something where I find my focus and my mindfulness, and almost something that we call the state of flow. The state of flow for me is my creativity. So when I'm in my studio creating my work, that has been so supportive for me because it's got me through so much. So creativity has most certainly been my vessel to kind of getting through and understanding who I am. I found my own autonomy finally, and my own identity. The list goes on, but it's been a real a homage to my commitment to actually believing and wanting to heal my life.
Creativity, an aid to recovery.
So there you go, I've just touched upon that, but indeed that's something I believe very, very firmly. I'm an advocate of it, and I guess I'm probably an example of it as well, because creativity has been such an aid to my recovery. I don't claim that I am recovered, because progressive sight loss, there is no end to that, there is no end game. It's a constant thing. But however, my artwork has been that articulation, the way I can allow myself to express myself about my feelings when I couldn't talk about them. The piece that, there's several photos on that slide, but there's a piece that I brought back to life, or I'm trying to bring back to life. It's the piece that I created for my final major project at Art College when I was 19, so it's very, very poignant in the story, as that was the age I was discovered to be going blind. And I created it, I got a great distinction mark for it at the end, and I kept it because I just loved it, and it's been everywhere I've been. But it's an outside sculpture, so every garden I've ever owned, every kind of place I've ever lived, it's lived outside. And over time, it has deteriorated. And I just thought, this is such, again, it's so similar to the Kintsugi message and philosophy of life. And that's why I brought her back into my forefront, even though she's not by no means, I was 19 years old, so in my mind, she certainly isn't of the quality of my work that is 30 years on, and of course she wouldn't be. However, I think she's a beautiful example of using the Kintsugi technique to repair her, and B, the philosophy of which Kintsugi brings to the table as well. So I'm going to be repairing her. It's an ongoing project, so it's a slow moving project, as I have many other commitments, but eventually I will be using gold resin to actually repair her and bring her back to a more, more beautiful self. She will then be placed in an exhibition that will be called Coming Home. It initially was called One. There is a kind of a change of narrative due to the piece that I'm putting in, that she's called Beautiful Imperfection. She's going to make a great flagship piece for this collection. and also she'll be turned into professional practice and then will be able to be placed into my PhD. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to.
Sensory learning.
So sensory learning is really something, once again, is a very much present and future thing for me. I go into fine arts very often when I come up here and do a very unique workshop with the fine arts department. It's basically I sit everybody down very much similarly in the way that you are all seated. I will then ask you to put the blindfold on, and then I will ask you to sit with that blindfold and sit within blindness and just contemplate. Allow feelings to come through you. They might be uncomfortable, they might not be. You might find other positive things or negative things, but it's a real individual's interpretation. And then once we've done that, I basically talk to the students, and then I ask them to engage in the play which is in front of them and try really to allow that inner feeling of what they're experiencing in a blind situation to come through into the work. Got a few clips.
The first step for you is the vision is taken, and I'm going to let you just sit there and sit with that. Alright, I want you to sit with what it feels like. I'm going to put feels in quotes, because that is, I believe, the emotional intelligence behind what we're about to do. I want to take you to a deeper level of understanding your emotions about a certain situation that we're being placed into. The reason why I want to do that is because I really do believe that that will really engage you in your own inner, what I call the sixth sense. So sensory learning, top of the triangle, embodied cognition, and the final piece is the inner sixth sense that you hopefully will achieve after doing this exercise.
So really what I'm trying to get out of the experience for each individual is to not just experience blindness, but also to experience the sixth sense, for which obviously I explained a little bit about earlier with the Blinder Sixth Sense exhibition. And I believe that is a sense of inner trust. For me, on my own experience, is certainly a sense of inner trust. And I think it's hard to find. I really believe that it's hard to find in everyday living. Our senses are very distractional. In fact, 80% of us gain all knowledge from just our ocular centric view. So basically, we're not even using our ears to half the percent that they could be used. We're not using our touch, our scent, smell, our taste. They're just laying dormant because everybody is overusing their eyes. But there has a knock-on effect as well in the optometry side of things, because the more people seem to be producing eye-orientated devices, shall we say, overusage of such things is actually causing more sight loss within society. So we're actually creating more sight loss by overusing that particular sense.
Do you think you can tell me what you're depicting?
I feel like the middle is more thick, because the middle that is very thick is myself, and then I feel like I try to make some waves about tapping into a different dimension and figuring out how I'm feeling.
So
Like
the waves are basically the movement of your feelings.
yes,
Are
yes.
Are you finding positive feelings or interacting with negative feelings?
I think it's both.
Yeah, to create the waves and the shapes.
Yes, this kind of shapes. But inside the middle, I left it thick because that's my body. And the waves are the emotions. Like, I think it's good and bad emotions.
Can we go into those emotions?
It's kind of sad to not be able to see, but on the other side, not being able to see, I have to see with some other part of me inside.
So I think what she's really trying to articulate is we all have that ability, that inner vision, beyond vision. And in fact, beyond vision is actually, I founded the website victoriaclaire-beyondvision.com purely as a community-based hub for those with visual impairment, to inspire them to find resources and just really bring people together with visual impairment and share positive stories. Of course, beyond vision, you could say again, is the sixth sense, but we all have that within us, but I do not believe we have the capability of tuning into that sixth sense without finding a sense gone. So really, one of those senses needs to be gone to then create that inner going into oneself. This young man I'm about to play you next is actually quite interesting. He also is hearing impaired as well.
How about your experience with you looking at it?
It just feels like there's a lot bone, there's a lot that bone and in different shapes, and it feels like, yeah.
It feels like what you wanted it to be.
Yeah.
What your feelings were trying to depict. Yeah?
Mm.
Do you think that your hearing impairment plus a visual impairment almost blocked out even more disruption and distraction from the environment?
Yeah.
Do you think that did it enable you to connect deeper, to find that sixth sense?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I have to point this out, and I didn't realise it until we were putting this presentation together. As you heard, I'm sure you probably found a distraction going on in the background of that. Can anyone tell me what that was? Exactly. And I'm assuming that you were pulled to listen to the distraction, and you found it quite hard to then engage with actually what was being said. Would you agree? Yeah. So that's it was an accident. It was a beautiful accident, but that gives you another example of a sense being overwhelmed, as we can be so distracted by so many things: sight, sound, taste, smell, touch. They can all be a distraction to us, but they can also allow us, if you take one away, to be more engaged with our own embodied sort of cognition, if you like.
Positive psychology.
So positive psychology is something that is quite new to me. It's certainly a discussion that I'm finding extremely interesting and will be studying in depth for my PhD. Post-traumatic growth is part of positive psychology, and post-traumatic growth for me, it says exactly what my experience has been about. Although my tragedy and trauma from kind of progressive sight loss is of course at the beginning a shattered life, if you will, but somehow finding the resilience and the strength, and with that ability to hold my creativity still regardless as to what was happening to me, and believe enough in that it carried me through and actually just paved the way for me. And I could say that in fact was my blindness gain. I believe that is what I gained, the value of blindness, which is something I'm trying to kind of show you today, is the fact that actually there is growth within that experience of going blind. Or, you know, I can't just say it's just about blindness. I'm sure that will cover most traumatic situations. But blindness gain is something, again, that will be a big part of my PhD. So I look back on my life. Would I have wanted things to be different? Would I have wanted to continue to see? In all honesty, no. I honestly now believe, and it's taken me an extremely long time to actually say this out loud, I am now exactly where I want to be, doing exactly what I want to do. I am educating young people. I am being an advocate and making change, creating change for the better. I've been engaging in creativity on a level that I believe is a very profound one. And I just really, really want to bring to the forefront that yes, trauma of all kinds is extremely hard to manage on a psychological level. However, there is growth, there is gain. It just comes back to the simplest thing of the saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. There is a silver lining in, you know, every cloud has a silver lining. All those types of sort of paraphrases actually are true if you allow them. But you have to allow the light to come into the darkness. So I'll just finish with this. Step into the light. Don't be afraid of the light. But always step into the dark too. Because if you step into the dark, I can guarantee you will find light. Thank you very much.